Hey, Iliang.
Hey.
Yeah, I can't tell if it's nighttime or daytime for you, but let's get started. Thank you, folks, for joining us live. Thanks, Suresh, for kicking off the event. This today's session is very much focused on people and people in companies that work with people, uh, loosely speaking HR, but there are other teams as well. And for those of you joining us for the first time, this is a monthly work jam where we do a live demo of how to use automation and AI to uh, get some pretty valuable business outcomes in your company. And the recording will be available in the same link. And please post your questions in the comment section and we'll answer as we go. Next. Okay, hopefully some of you are familiar with Iliang. He builds a lot of amazing automations, especially with AI. He's gone very creative, and we'll showcase some of that today. And today's topic, it's about like how do you future-proof your hiring, and the idea is like how do you create, like there's been every company has initiative around business intelligence. How do you drive business better? But there's an equivalent for that. Creating talent intelligence so you can manage your workforce all the way from recruiting to employee development to employee turnover and things. How do you use talent intelligence to manage your workforce better? And we'll show one of the examples how to use generative AI and Workato. So Iliang, want to share something about yourself before we jump in?
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Iliang. I'm a product manager here at Workato. I'm very passionate about hiring. Right. I spent almost a year being a recruiter. Right, and I know sort of the ins and outs and the pain points. Right, so this is something pretty close to my heart.
Okay. Next, Iliang. So this should not come as a surprise. Like any research out there, industry research that you look up, talent is the number one currency. Like whether it be regardless of the organization, size of the organization, the business and industry you're in, finding top talent and not losing to competition is the number one problem that companies face. The next could be finding customers, and we can go to the next one, Iliang. So there are a lot of things. I think earlier this year we had showcased there's some automation using AI that helped recruiters streamline their resume screening process and respond to candidates much faster. Today we are taking that a level up, and we'll tell more about that. But these are some of the things that we see customers do with Workato and Gen AI in terms of improving their hiring process, talent development process, and building their talent intelligence within the company. Next one, Iliang. So whether you're a hiring manager, whether you're a recruiter, if you have been participated in the hiring process, the typical workflow looks something like this. There's a job description. Any company will have, large enterprise will have hundreds of thousands of job openings at any given point in time. And regardless of the economy, the ratio of resumes, the candidates applying for these jobs easily runs into several hundreds. And it becomes very hard for recruiting teams to find the right candidate for the role. But the typical process also has been recruiters would go and say, this is a job description for a senior software engineer, and only look at the candidates that have applied for that job, where there's several other candidates who might have applied for other jobs but might be relevant for some positions. And given the process, the intensity of the process, the volume of resumes recruiters have to go through, and the manual nature of these things, typically, again, the hiring speed is slower and lower. and oftentimes we lose talent to because we look for very specific things in a very subjective way, and overall that increases the cost of hiring. So today we'll talk a little. We can go to the next one, Ilian. Today we'll go into the details, like essentially think about this problem of matchmaking is not new. It exists in the world of consumers, in the dating world, in the wedding world, uh, but the same can apply to recruiting as well. Instead of matching a resume to a job description, is there a better way for us as companies, us as hiring managers and recruiters, to find the best job fit within a company for a candidate? And Ilyang, with that, I'll pass it along to you. How you're making this happen in reality?
All right. Yeah, so just to pick up where we left off on this slide, what we're trying to do here is we're trying to go beyond, this sort of very simple, straightforward manner where candidates apply and then we sort of see whether they're a good fit or not, right? We want to take a look at it holistically, both from a scaling point of view, right, where we want to accelerate the way we look for candidates, the way we source and we hire, right, and at the same time we want to find the most ideal position for each candidate, right? We want to make sure that they thrive, right, and then they do well. So this is where I'm going to be very brief here, right? So what we are going to showcase today is really the central part, right? The entire flow is going to resemble the typical HR flow, where a candidate comes into where it comes into your radar, right? And then we can sort of cater for hiring and everything on the tracking side of things, right? But what we're going to focus on here today is how we're going to supersize and accelerate how we extract right information from a candidate's profile, how we classify them and consolidate them right into a talent repository, right, and how we can automatically generate recommendations, right, very very quickly, right. So without further ado, let me jump directly straight into our demo. Okay, so first off, this is nothing new, right? This is a resume from a person, right? Because at the start of every HR workflow, it has to do with people, right? So what we're looking at is a very simple sort of resume that may come in, right? So this person could have applied for, let's say, a software engineer position, right? And this is great and all. If it's one candidate for one position, I'm sure anyone could have reviewed it and make a recommendation, right? I think this person is pretty good, right? But what if we are scaling it up to, let's say hundreds of thousands, right? And then we are also talking about different kinds of positions, right? So how do we make this a very standard process, right? Where their hard requirements, core requirements, like, do they possess the necessary skills, right? Do they have related work experiences, right? So all those things we should be able to extract, right? Store it in a central place so that it's easy for us to compare and to find the correct candidate. So how does that look like? So what we're showing here, for those who have attended our previous LinkedIn Live, it's not, I highly recommend that you guys go and check it out, right? But a quick primer is what we're doing is we're extracting certain sort of standard pieces of information out of their resume, out of their portfolio, right? And to give us a very, very standardized way of looking at this person, right? So in this case, I've highlighted here, hey, from this resume from, let's say, Sean Jackson, right, we can see that he has been working for 9 years. So if your hiring manager has a base requirement that says, hey, I'm looking for someone very senior, right, make sure that they have at least 8 or 9 or 10 years of experience. This is a very simple way for us to meet that requirement, right?
Ilian, do you mind zooming in, please?
Oh, it might be a bit
Yeah,
small for you guys.
I know your eyesight seems perfect. I have a hard time reading.
Apologies there, right? So yeah, so we are passing this resume with certain instruction, passing that into in this case we're using ChatGPT, right? And then we're giving them in, instructions to extract this these pieces of information out, right? So we can have very structured information, like what is their email, where do they work, what languages do they speak. We can even go into the more sort of abstract, or it depends on the way, it depends on the domain that you're in, right? The kind of work that you do. But when we're talking about skill sets, right, that's something that that is a little bit harder to pin down. So for example, in the technical world, we'll be concerned with things like, hey, do you work with these sort of tools? So we can see that this person, Sean, he's familiar with Docker, Kubernetes, he's good with RESTful APIs, right? And perhaps someone from a marketing role or a sales role, right, will have a completely different technical stack. We can even go into historical data, right? Like, what were the different companies that they've worked at? What were their roles? How long they've stayed there? Right? All of these would feed into this holistic candidate profile. And sort of the last thing I'll say on this slide, right, is that we are not just doing it one and done, right? We are not just browsing through this resume and then saying, okay, this is a good fit for this role, and then that's it, right? We are taking this information out, we are extracting it, right, and then we are storing it within our central database. And the reason we do that, right, is that it gives us the ability to have a candidate pool, right? Not and at any point in time, if there's sort of a new opening, right, as we'll see later, we will be able to fish out sort of pull out candidates from this pool, right, and say, hey, you might have tried this position previously. We have a new opening, right? Would you like to take a look at that, right? So let me go over here and let's see, right? So very simply, we extract the information um, out of the resume, and then we can have a standard format like this. So what are we looking at, right? We're looking at all the candidates within our hypothetical Zing workspace, Zing company, right? So we see their name, their email, and then we can start to see the idea of structured data here, right? So for every person, we know where they are based at, right? So some people are in the US, some people are in Singapore, and littered across parts of Asia, right? We know their work experience, the languages that they speak. So all of that, right, would help us to find a good match between the job posting, right? What position they're applying for, as well as whether they have these prerequisite skills. But as we move over to the right hand side, we get up to a bit more sort of the fuzzy matching, right? So things like what technical software do they work with, what are the work experiences, and so on and so forth. And we can even go to skills, right? And skills is something that is very, very hard to pin down, as whether you have it or you don't, right? And the reason we can do all this, right, is again, we are building up a candidate profile. So let me pull you back to a more realistic day-to-day operation, right? So this is a simple job huddle, right? At any point in time, let me just take a look in the US, right? I assume, right? Yeah, 88 current openings, right? And this is probably serviced by a couple of recruiters. So any person at any point in time in the HR space, they'll be juggling, maybe 20 to 50 different openings, right? And if you were to sort of do it manually, right, which is when there's a new requisition, there's a new opening, right, you begin to read through the resume, figure out what the core requirements are, what the skill sets are, and then you go and source for candidates. That's a lot of time wasted, right? Just imagine if we can combine all the information that we've gathered on candidates, combine it with all the information, about about the position, what are the specific requirements, what will make a candidate successful. We combine it, right, and we immediately have um, 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 recommendations right off the bat, right? So just imagine you've just started your first you've just opened this position, right? And you want to say, hey, within my pool of candidates, so let's imagine, right, that within our database here we have a little bit more than 20 candidates, right? Let's say we have like 10,000, right? And we are trying to say, hey, we have created a new job posting, right? So let's say we have created this one here, software integration engineer, right? And we're trying to find people who would be a good fit, right? So we can scroll on to the right hand side and say, hey, okay, so this position is based in the US, it's pretty senior, so 8 years of experience here. Seems like it's a requirement for the team to converse in English, so that's why the language is there, the technical stack, right? Oh, okay, so so these are sort of details that you guys can easily plug out in your conversation with the hiring manager, right? But here's the fun part, right? Knowing these pieces of information about a job position, how do we get a match from a candidate pool, right? So we can have 200 open positions, 300 open positions at any point in time, and your candidate pool can be in the tens of thousands, right? So how do we limit that? How do we filter that down into a number that we can work with? That's where a little bit of SQL magic comes in, right? So here we have a very simplified candidate job match SQL, right? It looks like there's many lines, but let's take it through it line by line, right? Let's just focus on the bottom part here, right? So we're saying let's combine information from our job posting, combine it with our candidates, and we must make sure these are the conditions that have to be met, right? Number one, the candidate must have more years of experience than what is required of the job. That just makes sense, right? Then we will have to say, hey, this candidate must have education that's above what is required. That once again, that just makes sense. Then we can go into things like, hey, do they speak the same language, right? We can also go into asking, hey, of all the core technical skills that are required for this position, does this candidate have them, right? So all of these are just very logical things that we think to ourselves in our head, and then we put it down into SQL, right? And then everything above, right, is just okay, without much explanation, let me just run this and let's see what we have, right? So every row in this example will come in pairs, right? So sorry, every column will come in pairs. So let's just take a look at this too, right? So on the left-hand side, you will see the years of experience that's required for this position. And on the right-hand side, you'll see the years of experience that this person has, right? So Jane Forrester, for this role, it requires 8 years of experience. This person has 10. That's great. As we move on to the right-hand side, hey, this person needs to, this position is based in the US. They work in San Francisco, so I think this is a good match. But maybe on row 2, this might not be a good match. We might have to sort of have more clarity, right, in how we filter. And then as we go all the way to the right-hand side, I think this is a good example here, right? Where in the JD, right, in the job description, you specify, the hiring manager specifies, hey, this person must work with Java. And guess what? The candidate does work with Java, right? So what we've done here is a very simple process of taking very sort of concrete deterministic rules, right? They must have more than 8 years of experience. They must have this technical skill, right? And then we implement that using a SQL statement, right? Which is something that, not too hard, right? But this is something that we can do. But we can already see, right, that there are certain areas which might not be so easy to implement using a SQL statement, right? Such as the location one here. Right, so how do we then address this, right? But let me just emphasize here, right? What we've done with this, few lines of SQL statement is we have theoretically reduced, right, the candidate pool from, let's say, tens of thousands, right, to hundreds, right? Because they must meet the, years of experience, they must meet they must meet the education requirements, right? They must meet the language, the technical spec, right? So just by having this very rule-based filtering, we have already created a small pool of qualified candidates that we can then use in the later part of the process, right? And which is something that I'm going to jump to next. So what are we
Ilya,
going to do?
maybe probably it was not as obvious even to get to this kind of structured query right with SQL. Like you had to convert the unstructured data, which is a job description, the resume, right, into structured data that's stored in this talent repository, right? So only after that are you able to apply SQL.
Oh, sorry, yeah. that goes without saying, right? That everything that we do, we have to apply some sort of standards, right? So it's not as easy to say, hey, the years of experience must match the years of experience here, right? You must make sure that these columns or these data sets, these standards, right, exist on both sides, right? Both on the candidates end as well as on the job posting end, right? We didn't go through too much detail, right? Just because the process is roughly the same, right? You work with generative AI to say that, hey, these are sort of the columns or the information that I need, right? And then you sort of get run your job descriptions through it. You run your candidate's resume through it, right? And after all that hard work, do you come to this stage, right, where you have a sort of clean, right, quote unquote, clean pool of data, right? That when you do this kind of simple SQL statements, right, you come up with pretty beautiful, candidate candidate recommendations. All right. So let's move on to the next stage, right? Which is, we have filtered, tens of thousands of candidates down to like 100, right? So how do we move on to the next step and get really, really good quality recommendations beyond just, more than or less than, right? So that's where Workato comes in, right? Workato allows us to stitch together workflows involving open AI or generative AI, right? So let me expand my screen. So I'll just talk through the flow, and then we can go into specific portions of this recipe, right? So steps 2 and 3 here, right, are exactly what I showed you earlier, right? Which is, let's select a role, right, where the years of experience must be higher than the years of experience, right? So this is exactly the same thing that I showed you, and in fact, I think in the output we can see a familiar name here, Jane Forrester, with 8 years of experience, right? So everything is the same there. So the scenario that we are sort of going through here is that you just open a new position, right? We are looking through a current pool of candidates to see how we can get a head start on recruitment from your current pool. So in this case, Jane Forrester has been recommended by our core requirements sort of filtering, right? And let's see how we can bring that to the next stage. So moving on to the next stage is down here, right? So first thing that we do is we query back all the sort of structured and unstructured data that we got from the candidate. So we can see things like very, very simple things like what's the email, where do they live, the years of experience is all there, right? We also have things like what languages do they speak, things like skills, things like work experiences, right? Which may be written down in different forms, right? But we have captured it all here. And here we come to the magical step, right? We feed it into some sort of large language model, and we say, hey, what I want at the end of the day is a recommendation, right? Do you recommend this candidate for this position? And a recommendation can go from something very, very simple to something very, very complex with a lot of detail, right? And that is ultimately where we want to be, right? So when we get an output out of ChatGPT, we must keep in mind, what we are trying to do here, which is we are coming up with a scorecard, right? That someone from HR, someone from recruiting, right, can use, right, to make a decision about whether this is a good candidate, right? So I'm going to scroll down to the bottom first, right, because it's a lot of details above, right? But if you want to start simple, we can do something like this and say, hey, chat GPT, right? Can you give me a simple number, right, that will tell me if this candidate is a good fit, right? So in this case, 88%, right, tells me that, oh, more or less, this candidate has all the skills. There's a lot of overlap, right, between the domains that they're good at and the requirements, right? And if you want to, we can go into more detail, right, such as what is the recommendation here, right? Oh, this is a strong candidate, and then we recommend proceeding to the next stage, right? And if you want to go even into more detail, right, that's where everything above comes in, right? So these are all domains that this person is good at. These are all the details, right, about how they are matching and so on and so forth, right? But then again, this exists as data, right? How do we then make this actionable? And this is where Workato shines, because we can easily stitch the information that comes out of this job right into a Slack message. So let me just quickly move over to my Slack, and here we go, right? So just imagine this is the first, you've just opened this position, you're trying to hire for a senior software engineer, right? And then you run this job, right? You run this Workato recipe, and within, minutes, right? Let's be realistically, right? We are running through, many um, candidates here. So within minutes, right, you will be able to receive very tailored, specific recommendations like these, right? This is, hey, for this position that you've opened up, right, we recommend this candidate, Jane Forrester, right, with a particular score, and then the recommendations are all here, right? If you just want to make a very quick judgment, I think these pieces of information would be just fine. But let's say you want to go more into detail, right? You can go into what are the skills match, whether the working arrangement is a good fit, so on and so forth, about location, about personality, right? It's all very tailored information to what the hiring manager would need, right, in order to make an informed decision. And of course, at the end of the day, because we are targeting, something that is actionable, we can have very simple buttons here built in to say, hey, do we want to move this candidate to the next stage, or this recommendation is not very good, right? The score that you gave me is like 60, but I would prefer if this candidate has something like a 75, right? Then you can simply reject this candidate, and that's fine. Um, and sort of the last thing that I would like to say here, right, is that when we work with people, right, we have to be sort of we cannot forget the human part of this interaction, right? And that's something that comes into play whenever we are communicating through emails, sending them acceptance or rejection emails, right? So this is something that we can do, right? So we've just seen that we have decided to not accept this recommendation, and it only makes sense, right, to say, hey, I think that this recommendation is not good, right? This candidate is not a good fit for this position for these reasons, right? And Chat GPT is an excellent tool for us to auto draft this, right? So everything here, from a click of a button, we are able to help to streamline the different flows for how to improve this experience, right? So to sum up what we've done today, right? We've started off with simple resumes, right? Created a flow such that we can extract very detailed and specific pieces of information, such as the years that they've worked, the location that they're at, right, as well as more unstructured free-form data, like the skills that they have, the work experiences, and we've consolidated that into a single repository, right? And this allows us to
Can we go back to slide number 6, please? I just want to speak to something that John mentioned in the comments. So, and you called it out as well, the standardization, like the resume will, every resume will look different. But what signals you capture from that resume in terms of like job title, role, companies, tenure, coding skills, there's a standard set of signals that you want to capture from every resume, and then there will be additional data like which may be in text format. But this exercise has to be done part of this process to make sure you collect you're storing the right set of information in your talent repository, and the same needs to happen on the job description side of things. Without those two, the matchmaking is going to be very hard. If you didn't capture the job title role, then you won't be able to match find the right candidate for a senior software engineer. So that exercise, part of this designing this particular automation, is an important step. Thanks, John, for calling that out.
Are there any more questions in the chat that are good to sound out and to talk a bit more?
No, let's continue, Iliang.
Okay, yeah. So to sum up, right, I think we have gone through the entire flow here, right, which is sort of the core of what we want to present, right, is how do we supersize, how do we accelerate the recruitment, the sourcing, right, the matchmaking process of hiring a candidate, right? And we've done that with very simple automations, right? Working with chat GPT, working with AI is something that we've been tackling for many months now, right? So we are very used to the idea where we create prompt engineering, where we give rules to extract things like structured and unstructured data, right? But how Workato stitches it all together, right? You extract things out of open AI, right? You put it into a consolidated talent repository, right? And then you can do things like automated recommendations anytime a candidate joins, right? So not only so the example that I gave was whenever you have a new job position that's open, right? You can run this automation and say, hey, for this position, we look through all the candidates to find uh, um, recommendations within the current candidate pool, right? You can reverse this automation and say, hey, every time we have a candidate joins, right, are they a good fit for the position that they've applied to? But not only that, we can say, hey, you've applied for position A. Have you considered, positions B, C, and D? Because your skills are a good match. Your profile is a good match. Your interest aligns, right? And sort of these are things that a candidate might not even know, right? That such positions are open, because if they don't see it, then they don't see it, right? But yeah, so Agado just makes it very easy to sort of make sure that all this information is tightly glued together, right, for an optimum sort of experience.
Yeah, thanks, Iliang. A couple of questions. I think you called that out, but it's important to repeat that in this entire workflow, if you see in this visual, if we can go back to the last one, there is a AI part that does like makes the. Sorry, Iliang, can you go back to the visual with the AI flow? Yeah, the AI talent intelligence box that does a lot of things that humans do much faster, of course, and it will have its hallucination biases and so on. But I think, John, you mentioned about biases from a diversity standpoint, inclusion standpoint. Those things again can be calibrated depending on how you set up the prompts and so on. But finally, there's always a human review. It's not AI is auto rejecting, auto approving things. There's always what this example shows is it's making the human decision making faster, like in human analysis faster, but the final decision to review all the facts and recommendation and take action of approve and reject, it's entirely on the human. So that part, for the foreseeable future, let's keep it that way. And but that's where I think most of the things there will be a human in the loop that reviews things, make sure things are right, and then based on the policies and such makes the decision in this example. The one other this is an example. Maybe we just talked about one of the use cases in terms of how recruiters can use talent intelligence and automation together. But if you think about it, like you can reverse engineer a job description like completely based on the kind of candidates you have hired who have been successful and so on, with the data you have in this repository. When your recruiting team reaches out to source candidates, typically they would go and find me candidates like Frank or Amy or whoever that just left the company, and you can check their profile and search source based on that without having to go to the hiring manager, say what kind of profiles should I search for. So creating this talent repository from the various data sources, the job descriptions, the resumes, the employee development data, that could be another source, and so on, gives you immense power to like create a platform to for the overall development of your workforce, aside from the recruiting a resource. So hopefully, folks, this was interesting enough for you to explore. These are some ideas that we see customers working on, and we bring that to you. If you have other ideas, do share that with us, and we'll try to build those or better. You can come and present with us too. So thank you again for joining today's session. Thank you, Ilian.
Yeah, thanks, Trudy. Had a great time. Thanks everyone for joining.
Uh,